Let's get started. My name is Fred Nauer. I'm the Chief Flight Instructor at Thunderbird Aviation, and this seminar today is all about ForeFlight Flight Planning. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the new stuff and some of the information that's probably good to have on your ForeFlight or in your possession before you start going through the process of flight planning for your using the ForeFlight system. So first off, this appeared the other day on my follow ForeFlight on Facebook, and this appeared. You can now hook up to Garmin. You can hook ForeFlight up to your Garmin system in your airplane. Now you need the Flight Stream 110, 210, or 510 system coming out of your Garmin, so there may be some Garmin outfits out there that this doesn't work on. But if you have the ability to use a iPad and the Garmin app to transfer flight planning information from your tablet to the Garmin and back, now you're able to do that using the ForeFlight system too. From what I've been able to read, it appears that in the Flight Stream 110 version, those Garmin systems with that, as soon as you turn it on, it automatically starts looking for a Bluetooth connection. So then all you have to do is go to your iPad and go to the Bluetooth and turn that section on and accept the Flight Stream 110 when it appears on your screen. For the Flight Stream 210 and 510, it looks like it's a little more complicated. You have to go into onto the Garmin system itself and tell the system that you want to connect it to Bluetooth. And so then it'll start sending out the Bluetooth signal for the Flight Stream 210, which I think is for Garmin 650s and 750s. And doesn't tell me what the 510 hooks up to. No, wait a minute. Flight Stream is installed on the 650 and 750, so I'm not sure what the 210 is connected to. But on both of those, you have to go into the Garmin system itself and turn the Bluetooth system on the Garmin side, so it'll connect up to your flight plan. So now everything that we're doing today on your iPad in ForeFlight can be transferred to the Garmin system if it's connected to the Flight Stream 110, 210, or 510. So then the next part, let me go get over here to my ForeFlight section here. A little button pushing here to get all the stuff set up the way I want it. On the ForeFlight system itself, some of the stuff you may want to add to the documents along the very, very bottom of the ForeFlight there, you'll see all sorts of various subject areas that you can get to. And the fourth one over on my list is called Documents. Let me close the one I was looking at there. And if you go to the over on the left side here, the ForeFlight section, you can choose information that ForeFlight publishes in order to be able to, because all the stuff I'm going to be talking about today, some of the stuff I'm going to be going through fairly quickly. If you get the Pilot's Guide to ForeFlight Mobile like I have here, and the other one is for weight and balance, because that's what another thing we're going to be talking about today. You can download that stuff if you have any of the ADS-B in systems that ForeFlight uses. You can download those books too, but the most important ones are the Pilot's Guide to ForeFlight Mobile and the Weight and Balance Guide, because once you've downloaded those, and up and down in my documents, we go down here and look for the ForeFlight You tap on that and everything you need, everything that's talked about in the ForeFlight system is right there. So you can either use the table of contents here to find something about information on ForeFlight, like airports, and it'll explain what the airport pages are all about. Or up in the upper right-hand side, there's a search button. You can either search by contents by typing in the word that you want. Again, look at contents, and if you find something that you use a lot, you can make it a bookmark, which I haven't done yet. So it's very good to have those handy, because every once in a while, especially when I'm trying to set up for these seminars, there's some things that I remember I do, but like putting this stuff in, putting the airplanes into the system. Once you've done it once, if you only want to do one airplane, then when it's time to do load the airplane information in again, sometimes it takes have this book handy so you can review all the stuff that you're going to be doing with that. So before you start flight planning on ForeFlight, the best thing to do is enter the information about your aircraft into ForeFlight, because the more information you can put into the ForeFlight system itself, the better off the information it's going to be able to give you during your ForeFlight, during the flight planning itself, and the easier it will be for have the ForeFlight do the filing for you when the whole process is complete. So to create an airplane, on the very, very bottom, way over on the right side, it says more with the little lines on it. Just tap on that and go down the list till you find the part about aircraft. I've already had some that are already preset over on the side here, but I'm going to add a new airplane today, so it'll be just like you're starting brand new with the ForeFlight system, getting yourself set up to go fly. So on the left side there, where all the columns where all my airplanes are, at the very top it says aircraft with a plus. You tap the plus, and it gives you a new setup for the airplane. So the tail number is required to be in there, and you must make sure that you start this with the letter N. It's very nice that it automatically sets the keyboard up to capital letters, but then you have to switch it over to numbers and then back to letters to put in the full tail number itself. So I just put in 2240 Golf, which is the number we're going to be using, the airplane we're going to be using today. If you happen to know the serial number, you can put that in there, but it's not required. The part that'll really help you out, though, is going down to the airplane type. You tap that in. Now you type in PA-28, and then let me drop the keyboard down here, all the PA-28s that are possible to be used will appear on the side there. So you just go down through the list, and I'm looking at 2240 Golf is a PA-28-161. So we just have to go looking for that one. PA-28-161 Warrior 2 with an 0320 engine in it. So if you tap on that, just select that, then it automatically puts the information in there. The aircraft color is, so category airplane, it already knows that because it knows what a PA-28 is, so sometimes it'll be smart. The aircraft color, if the color doesn't match, just tap on that, and you can do the main color on the first one and any additional colors off on the side just by moving, just by tapping and holding and moving on the color wheel there. Once you get the color set the way you want it, and it just automatically saves that. If you're always going to fly from the same place, then the home airport will be the place that they're always going to take off from. So that'll make flight planning easier because it'll always assume that's where you're going to start. And the airport airspeed units is in knots. Because I picked the PA-28-161, it does performance profiles. for a 75% fuel mixture, a 65, 55, and 65% fuel mixture to be used when you are doing your flight planning. You can go in and modify these if you want to for the cruise speed or the fuel flow, depending on exactly how you normally fly your airplane. But it's set up so that it should automatically be the exact same numbers that come right out of the POH in the section 5 there. Tap on the little 2240 Golf at the top to get back to the main entry page. And it gives the runway profile is the serial numbers that 2240 Golf belongs into. Field performance is whatever, for takeoff, what you normally do. Normally for us, when we're taking off, we use 0 flaps, but you can tap on this and set 0 or 25, whichever you decide to use. Then back to 2240 Golf at the top there. Because you put in 2240 Golf and you told it was a PA28-161 Warrior 2, it automatically knows what the best glide speed is and what the best glide ratio is. If you don't, then it takes a little bit of homework. You got to go into the POH and obviously look under the section 1 or the section 3 section for the best glide speed if the engine happens to quit, and the best glide ratio. If it doesn't come up automatically like it did here when I put in 2240 Golf and called it a PA28-161. You have to go in and do a little math. Somewhere in the POH will either be a graph like that they usually see in the Cessnas, or a table, which is usually in the Piper products. And you have to figure out how, so usually it says if you're at this altitude, you're going to glide this many miles. But in order to be able to figure out what the glide ratio is, you have to change the feet to miles or the miles to feet. So you're dividing the number of feet or miles that the airplane is going to travel over the number of feet in altitude you are above the ground. You divide those two numbers out, and that gives you the best glide ratio. But the nice thing about ForeFlight, since it's memorized all this stuff already, if your airplane is something that's already in the system, in the ForeFlight system, then most of this stuff just automatically comes out right on up. Default cruise altitude, if whatever you normally fly at, since we're doing VFR stuff, you might pick 6,500 feet. So just tap on the default altitude, change the number, whatever the maximum ceiling is for your airplane. The information here under the weight section is just the generic information. So that's just, so when we get to the weight and balance section, we'll put in the exact numbers for the airplane itself so that we have the weight and balance information for 2240 Golf. So again, before we get onto the main is weight and balance section, or in this section here, you'd have to have the official have the weight and balance section handy so that you know what the basic empty weight of your airplane is. And for the weight and balance stuff, which we're going to see move on to next, also for the center of gravity at that empty weight. So again, we've typed in PA28-161, all that information about the weight is automatically in there. Then the fuel type, 100 low lead gallons, start taxi and takeoff fuel, POA, the system already put that in there. Total usable fuel and default fuel reserve looks like about 30 minutes. The next thing down here is what you have to put in for filing. The FAA equipment is something you can probably just skip for now. The Icao equipment is the system that's being used by all filing now must be done using the Icao form. The nice thing about using ForeFlight is it automatically sends it into the 1-800 weather brief system, the flight service station system that exists now, using the Icao format. But to help this out as best you can, you want to make sure you figure out what your Icao stuff is. If you go to the FAA website, or just type in your search engine, type in Icao Flight Plan, and pick the one that says Icao Flight Plan PDF. That's the one that's connected to the FAA, that the FAA website has put out, and it has an explanation of all the different things that you can possibly put on the flight plan for all the things you need to know about filing. Like I said, about 80–90% of that is taken care of by ForeFlight, so you don't have to worry about it. The part you do have to worry about, though, is what is the equipment what is the equipment that you need to put in. So let me go back here and stop this, go here, stop share here, share screen over here, pick that one. And then click share, keep forgetting about that part. So I just pulled some information off of that system itself, off the page that comes from the FAA website. For our Icao equipment, basically for most of us who fly around the Twin City area, we would use the letter S. The letter S stands for Standard Com Nav Approach Aid Equipment. So that assumes that you have at least one communication radio, and it does include that you have a VOR or an ILS on board your airplane. So then when you're looking down the list, you also will see VOR and ILS as selections for equipment to put on board, but if you put the S in the, put the S on your Icao equipment thing, it's already been done. If you have a WAS approved GPS, then you want to put the letter B in there that tells the system that you can fly LPV approaches. The SBAS is Space-Based Augmentation System, which we call WAS here in the United States. If you have DME added to your VOR, the letter is D. If you just have a regular old GPS system, then you put in the letter G for GNSS, which is the generic term, Global Navigation Satellite System. So I'll go through the whole list here, then we'll talk about where to put it on the ForeFlight thing, because I don't want to be jumping back and forth between screens here. The next section you're going to be looking for on the ForeFlight side is the surveillance. How can ATC track you? For most of us flying around the Twin Cities, we'll have to put in the letter C, because we have to have a mode C transponder in order to be able to fly within 30 nautical miles of the mode C veil. And also, since January 1st, 2020, we also have need a system with ADS-B out. So there's two types. There's the 1090 megahertz version or the UAT version. Most of our airplanes at Thunderbird have the UAT version. And so if it's a 1090 hertz, it's either B1 or B2. B2 means that you also have ADS-B in capability, which is the box on the box that you have in your airplane will transfer information from the ADS-B system to whatever tablet that you have, so that you can download the traffic and weather information while you're flying. U1 and U2 are for the UAT systems. And again, the difference between the one and the two is that the two has out and in capability. Next thing it'll ask you is Icao wake category. All the airplanes that we fly here at Thunderbird are all light. So it's letter L, there's M for medium and H for heavy. So I'm assuming most of the people that are listening to me today are probably going to put in the letter L. If you have other systems on board for a different type, for a RNAV system, you can look that up to find there's the one that I looked like that it worked most often would be the letter C2 for a generic GPS system, and the S1 for an RMP approach approved WAS system. So if you have those, you can add those in the PBN section that we're going to see when we get back to the ForeFlight section. So those are the ones that are most common. If you have something different than that, just like I said, just type in Icao Flight Plan, choose the one that says Icao Flight Plan PDF, and that'll take you to where all this stuff is listed in grand and glorious detail. So, stop this, do this, screen, start. Undo that, back to ForeFlight. So, 2240 Golf is a very generic airplane, but we do have under Icao equipment the letter S. We have at least one ComNav radio in there, and we do have a VOR. So we type in the letter S there to show that we have the standard communication information. The Icao surveillance stuff. In 2240 Golf, we have the mode C, so we put in the mode C there, and then if we go down to, it's in alphabetical order, we have the ADS-B out and in, the U2 version. So I tap on that and add that to the system. All this needs to be in there for when you're doing it. Now it automatically knows, because we're a light airplane, that we're in weight category L. And if we had any of those extra pieces of equipment, then you would put it in there under the Icao PBN section. The next thing down is, if you happen to have life rafts on board your airplane, you can put information about the life raft into the system here, because Icao likes to have that information on the flight plan, and any information that you may have about life jackets and that type of thing. And so if you put all that information into the system, then .2240 Golf will be added to the system. You can see over here on the left side, it's right under most recent. It's at the very, very top of the line there. So if you go to another airplane and then come back, and now today you want to use 2240 Golf, you just tap on that and all the information is right there. So then the next thing you want to do is set up the weight and balance. Again, the system is most of the time I'm not ignoring the chat. I'm just trying to get through this first section here, and then we'll take a look at the chat to see if anybody has some stuff. I know some stuff where people are not being able to see certain sections that match what I'm doing on mine. Some of this stuff may be because I have a different version. I've paid for the highest version of ForeFlight, so sometimes when you're doing that, depending on what level that you're paying for ForeFlight with, may cause you to have different stuff going on than I do. Other parts of it may be that the system just does not recognize your type of airplane yet. But to do the weight and balance side, the first thing you do is start with November again and type in the tail number, 2240, back to the letters Golf, and then click next at the top of the page. It looks through the system and knows exactly what kind of airplane 2240 Golf is. If you want to use the normal category, you have to tap the dot under here, otherwise it will only give you your utility category for your weight and balance. So then you type next. So this is the part where you have to have your weight and balance document handy, either inside your POH, it's usually in your airplane, or a copy of it. I already wrote this down from my POH before I started today. 2240 Golf's basic empty weight is 1,442 pounds, 42.3 pounds. So you type in the number. Then the next thing is you either put in the center of gravity if you have that, or if you don't, have that put in the moment. But either one, if you start typing in the number, it already starts doing the math for you. Weight times arm equals moment. So our basic empty center of gravity is 86, whoops, backing up, 86.4 inches after the datum line, and it automatically calculates the moment for you. Type next. Now there's sometimes when so the caveat that I get here happens with most of our PA 20-161s. I think most of the time we've had this maximum gross weight modification added to our airplane, but because ForeFlight can't tell if it's been done or not, it's just going to give us the basic maximum weight of 2325. So we understand that, and we save this information, but then when you're done with all that, over here in the setup side, you can go over and change the takeoff and landing weight over in the side to the max weight of your airplane if it ends up being something different than what appears appears here on the side. But right now it says 2325. I think we can go up to 2540 now. So you would just tap here under takeoff weight and change it to 2540. Landing weight 2540. Whoops. Yeah. Anybody else notice since you started washing your hands 15 times a day and using that antiseptic goop that your iPad doesn't work very well? Sometimes it doesn't recognize your fingers. So we don't have any zero fuel waste, so then we save that. So now, so having done that, now you're going to have to go into the so you go down to CG, and now the max weight is 2540. And save. Now CGF limit for maximum takeoff weight. We just go down here. So every place it was 2325, we just have to change it to 2540. Once that's done, click Save. It automatically gives you a weight and balance envelope that matches all the stuff that's in the POH. And all the forward CG limits, the SCG limits are all right there. So since we're here, then when you have all that stuff set up, then down here at the bottom, right where it's next to setup, it says load. You tap the word load and just start typing in stuff. If it'll let me. So if you type in, so finally it showed up finally when I did the fuel tanks here. So you can put in 48 gallons. So if you type in 48 gallons, it automatically does the weight there. And then if you've done, so again, after you've done your flight planning, you figure out how much gas you're going to land with. But then once you have that done, you put the amount of weight the weight of the amount of fuel you're going to land with, and then it does the full trip from takeoff to landing appearing on the system, and then it also extends it out to let you know where you're going to be when you run out of gas. Let me try this again here. There, finally. So you can put in a name if you're so in, but you not just put in the name, weight of the person who is flying the airplane. Save that. Put in the weight of the person who's sitting next to you in the airplane. And then people in the back seat. And you notice every time I do this, the little thing keeps moving. And then if we put a full load of baggage in the back, come on. Finally. So, just like normal, you can't, in most Piper airplanes, you can't put 4 people and a full load of baggage and a full load of gas in the airplane. It just won't work. So that's the nice thing about the weight and balance thing here. I don't know if you could hear it or not. I heard it on mine. The thing beeped at me as soon as it went out of limits. So we just go back to here and take out the weight. Save that, and then bing, we're back inside the weight and balance envelope. So that's the aircraft setup portion of the thing today. Let me see what kind of questions we have so far. Yeah, like I said, most of the time, some of the stuff that I'm doing here is because it's the level that I'm at for the ForeFlight system that I have. So now back to the just moving on to the ForeFlight version here for the flight planning. The first thing is in the upper left-hand corner where mine says US VFR sectional. That's the main menu page for all the stuff that you can display on the screen. Some of it you can do all at once. Some of it can be is only one thing at a time. For example, you know, the VFR sectional and the IFR low and the IFR high are basically mutually exclusive. You can't do all 3 of them at the same time. Obviously, it would not work. But if you shut off the sectional, and then right above that it says aerial map, it's basically Google Maps. And it gives you everything that you need. So if you're a VFR person and you're trying to do it the old-fashioned way so you can pick your checkpoints, once you've picked your checkpoints on the sectional, then you can go to here and zoom in by moving things out and seeing exactly what it's going to look like when you fly over the top of that thing and whether the point you chose is actually going to be seen. I usually tell my students to be able to do this, especially if they're picking something on the sectional. It's like, I'm going to go to the north edge of the town, because the sectional seems to be about the town portion. All the stuff on the airport is all up to date. All the frequencies, all the runway lengths and all that kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff, they update it fairly quickly. But the basic map about where are the towns, how big are the towns, that type of thing seems to be about 5 to 10 years behind. So it's good to go to this aerial map view just to make sure that the edge of town is really still the edge of town. The other thing that's cool for it, just as an aside for any of you flight instructors out there, is the one of the things you can do while you're flying is do a what's called a breadcrumb thing. It just draws a little green line behind your airplane everywhere you fly. And so if your students out there doing maneuvers and you pick a point to do turns around a point at, you can zoom in, and the little green line will be right around the the intersection that they chose, and you can tell them how well they did doing their turns around a point. It's just trivia stuff. So for you VFR guys who want to do some VFR flight planning, first thing you might want to, bring up the VFR sectional first, then over on the right side of the menu here, first thing I would do is go down to the flight category, because then it brings up all the dots. The dots are the weather reports that go into the National Weather Service system. So 99% of them are airports. There's one like the one that's on top of Mount, what's that mountain out in New Hampshire where the wind is always the strongest? Mount Whitney? No, that's in California. But anyway, so sometimes it's a weather station and not an airport, but Obviously, if the green dot is next to a runway or covering up a runway, you know that this information is about the airport that you're going to be possibly flying to. So the first thing you want to do if you're going to be flying VFR that day is pull up ForeFlight in the morning and tap the flight categories section over there in the menu, and then look and see if where you're going to go flying is going to be good enough for you to be able to fly VFR. So as you can see, just to review stuff we've talked, Mount Washington, thank you very much, Mo. So as you can see, there are 4 different colors. For those of you who remember the old area forecast, at the end of the forecast, it said it was either going to be VFR, MVFR, IFR, or LIFR. So ForeFlight took those 4 weather things from the area forecast and turned it into colors to color code the weather reports coming from the weather station. So VFR is weatherman's VFR, not FAA VFR. VFR is really, really, really VFR. The visibility is greater than 5 miles, and the ceiling is greater than 3,000 feet. So the green dot means that the weather is really, really, really good. The blue dot then is MVFR, marginal VFR. That means the visibility is between 1 and 3 miles. I'm sorry, 3 and 5 miles, and the ceiling is between 1,000 feet and 3,000 feet. The red dot means that it's IFR. The visibility is between 1 mile and 3 miles, and the ceiling is from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. And then the pink, or I guess officially magenta dot, is low IFR, which means the ceiling's below 500 feet and the visibility is below a mile. So it's, you know, so for you IFR guys, that means you really got to think about what are my personal minimums? How well am I able to fly the airplane? Does the airport have an approach good enough for me able to get down to the runway in that kind of weather? The other nice thing about it does for the IFR guys is a quick look to see where the nearest VFR is if you're trying to do that, just in case your radio quits while you're in the clouds. And the other thing is, will this airport that I'm choosing as an alternate be good enough to be an alternate? So it's just a quick glance to be able to look at to see, for your VFR guys, am I going to be able to fly today? And for your IFR guys, do I want to fly to this airport with the weather report the way it is? The other stuff that we can do here is get the TFRs out to make sure we have those. So there's the permanent one, like the one around Washington, D.C. Looks like the president's going to Delaware today, so there's one over there. And, and the permanent one up here in Grand Forks for the drone training that goes on up there. And, there's the permanent one over Disneyland and one over Disney World. So there's all that stuff. But these are the main TFRs. But the other nice thing about this is that even the ones that are going to be in the future will appear on the screen. You just tap on it, and it gives you information about what it is. This is the one that's up there by the open pit mine up near Hibbing, and it turns red those days when they're actually going to do blasting around the mine. That's a new thing that just happened. When you tap on something and you get information, it slides it over from the side rather than covering up the screen. It does squeeze it up a little bit, but when I'm flying though, if I'm looking at something and I accidentally tap it, it automatically does that too. So the other nice thing about ForeFlight and TFRs is it puts it around. It went into the all the sports stadiums that have more than 30,000 seats, looked up the sport, whatever sport is at that place, looked up the schedule, and it puts that information into the system. So I think this is the one that's around. I can't tell. It's around both of them, so I can't tell if it can't be the Vikings. It must be the Twins. So that this is the only place you're going to see where it's represented on a map for the sports stuff. The FAA website doesn't tell you where the sports stuff is. It just says you got to know that if it's a sports stadium with more than 30,000 seats, you got to avoid it by 3 miles or above 3,000 feet AGL. So ForeFlight went in and started putting stuff on the map so you can tell if a event is going to be happening in the future, and when the event is happening, it'll turn red. But again, it's still, you got to keep an eye on it because it's an hour before the thing starts, so they know when that's going to happen. The trick is, when does it end? And so it's supposed to be the TFR continues an hour after the whatever the sport is ends. And so if they go into overtime or extra innings, then that might change. But you can get TFRs to look at on your map before you go doing any flight planning. And then finally, Airmen Segments, and so down in the when you do that, the little thing appears at the bottom how old the information is, and then you can choose which airmen or segment you want to look at. So if you tap them all, you get all the airmen and segments for the whole country. And if you just untap them, you can get down to the individual ones. And then once you figure out whether it's going to affect your flight or not, you tap on it, and the information about that airmen or segment appears over on the side, so you can tell whether that's going to affect you or not. So obviously the stuff that's going on here is we've got a lot of garbage going on because of that big, huge storm that's dumping 2 feet of snow on Colorado even as we speak. So all sorts of information over here on the side that you can use to help you figure out what your flight planning, even down to the point where, let me shut that one off, even down to the point where you could get way down at the bottom. If you're a 100 low lead airplane, it'll tell you the price of gas at various airports. And the closer you zoom in, the more prices appear for all the places that have gas for sale. And it's even color coded for the, I don't know what distance they use, but I don't know what distance they use, but the most expensive stuff is in red, the moderate prices are in orange, and real cheap stuff is in green. So you got that information there. PIREPs. We've got a lot of turbulence, some icing stuff out here in the snow. Just tap on it and it'll tell you what the information is about the PIREP. Ragged bases at 2,900 feet. So a lot of stuff over here on the side that you can use to get for a quick look of information before you start the flight plan. For your, like I said, for a VFR, then you just, to start the flight planning portion, for either one, tap the FPL at the top of the page there. Let me remove this. And then, let me just clear that out too. If there's 1 or 2 things on there, you can just tap and hold and slide it off the thing. Otherwise, it's just when you have something on there, the little clear button appears over on the side. So let's start from Crystal Airport. And then like I said, the clear thing over on the side, you want to clear the whole screen. If you've got lots and lots of points and now you're moving on to something else, like we will here in a little bit, that's what the clear button's for. But for VFR stuff, just where you're coming from, where you're going to, and there it is. Based on the, so I'm sorry, then the first side in the flight plan here is picking the airplane that you've chosen to fly. You can change it to other power settings if you want. You can change the altitude because because if you're connected up to Wi-Fi while you're sitting at your desk, or in the ADS-B in stuff in the airplane, once it's up and running, it'll tell you what the winds are, and so then you can choose what most likely would be the best altitude to fly at based on the wind. So maybe today, going up the International Falls would be better to be at 4,500 than to 6,500 because there's less headwind. Now this is an average. You know, you can always look at the Aviation Weather Center site to get the winds aloft forecast to get an exact idea of what the winds are going to be doing. ForeFlight does that too. If you go to the airport information at Crystal for the weather, we got METARs and TAFs, and the MOS is the model output statistics is basically a graphical forecast for those places that don't have a TAF nearby. It's a way they can give you information about the weather at the airport from now into the future. And the other neat thing is this new stuff. This is another thing that's appeared since the last time we've talked, for those of you who've seen me before, is this daily, hourly forecast. So now, instead of having to go to the Weather Channel web app or website, you're going to fly this weekend or on March 20th, just tap on that and it gives you all the information all day long, including for you where there's going to be VFR, where the ceiling is going to be, what the visibility is going to be, what they propose the winds are going to be like. And I think if it's close enough, and they color code this stuff too. So all sorts of neat information added to that. Close that. But the winds aloft then, I'm sorry, I got myself sidetracked. So you can go to the weather section and look at the winds aloft. And what this one does, as far as I can tell from ForeFlight, is takes all the winds aloft forecasts that are in the AWS site and throws them into a computer so that it conglomerates all that information together, so that the numbers you see on here may not be exactly what you see on that, because for Crystal, they're probably taking a lot of the Minneapolis winds aloft forecast, maybe a little bit of La Crosse, not so much of International Falls or Alexandria, but they take all the winds aloft around the area and then come up with a fairly decent forecast for what the winds are doing in your area. So again, if you can look at the altitudes based on the system there, but the nice thing about this one is, like I said, the 16 knots of headwinds, the 11 knots of headwind are all based on an average over your entire length of flight. So to figure out, is there any place where I'm going to have a headwind or a tailwind, or is it always going to be from the north or south or whatever? You can go into the visual airports, pull up the weather and look at the winds in each one to see how it changes as you go along. You want to be picky, if you want to look at individual sections to see where the weather might be better to go, maybe even picking a different destination. So then, to close the flight plan, now you're looking at your sectional and you go, okay, so I want to do some checkpoints along the way to make sure I'm still going where I want to, especially if you're a student pilot and you could be flying with me. You can, so if you're going for an FAA check ride anytime in the future, you can use ForeFlight as your main charts information, as long as you can prove to the examiner that your information on ForeFlight is up to date. If you paid your money for the yearly subscription, all the charts are automatically, if you set it up right, the charts are automatically updated. If not, down there in the lower right-hand corner under the More section, you see a red number down there. It says that stuff's available for download to update your charts and other airport information. So you can, like I said, you can use the sectional to say, okay, so I want to use my first checkpoint as this lake. You tap and hold, see a little circle appears there, and let go. And now, here's another cool new thing. It used to just, the map would disappear, but now it shows you where you just tapped and held. So you know that you're going to be around that lake, and you over on the side here on the insert route over on the right side there, you can fix nearby airports that you may have wanted to try, or down at the bottom, it's got our nav aids that are close by, our waypoints for you IFR guys, or everything that you got under all. But if that's the point you want to use, you either just tap on the latitude and longitude and it automatically puts the point there. But if it's something you're going to use very, very often, you always fly this trip and you're always going to do these points as your checkpoints, then under the more section, you can click save and actually type in a name for the point and everything and save it. We won't do that today. So tap and hold again, because I just lost everything I just did. The little dot, the little circle appears saying this is the choice point you've chosen. Just tap on the latitude and longitude and it automatically creates the waypoint for you. And again, like I said, if you want to rename it, you can just go back there and do that in the save thing. So then you're going to do it over here at the right next to the tower. So I beam the north side of the lake, big lake up here by Cambridge. And you just keep doing that. Then when you tap on the flight plan again, all those points appear in your flight plan. Then when you move, this was in the edit mode, down there in the lower bottom side of the flight plan box here, right next to edit, it says Nav Log. You tap that and it gives you the individual leg distances. And based on your fuel flow that you chose for 65% power, how much gas you're going to use overall and per leg, the distance for each leg, and based on your ground, based on the speed that it assumes you're going to be going, how long it's going to take you to get there. So you get the individual legs and the total time over here in the hours total section of the nav log. And like I talked about before, if you're concerned about whether you're going to be able to see that point or not, you can just go back to the aerial map and say, how big is that lake? Am I going to be able to see it where I am? Or is it, the road intersection or the edge of town or something like that? So by going to the aerial map for you VFR guys, it makes it a little bit easier to see, although except that tower kind of disappears in the into the with a top-down view like that. So that one's kind of bad. But picking the lake. So that's how you do a VFR flight plan. We'll talk about filing it and getting a weather briefing here in just a little bit. The next section, let's make sure I haven't. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. So then, let's go back to the flight plan. So then over here under edit, there's procedures. Now this will give you stuff for IFR and VFR, but the neat thing about it is, especially for approach, it'll give you approaches and stuff, but for your destination, it looks at the weather forecast and the METAR, basically the METAR at this point, 61 minutes ago, and tells you what the best wind is, which is the best runway to land on right now. So if you choose that runway, then you can choose from the direction you're coming in a 45-degree entry to downwind, a crossfield midfield teardrop, or the midfield direct, which is now authorized under the new advisory circular for uncontrolled airports. But if you pick the best side, because that's where you're coming from, it draws how to fly into the 45 to downwind from the side you're coming on. Because the midfield teardrop entry means you would have to fly across the airport, turn around, come back, and same thing with the midfield direct. So since we're coming in from the south, it'll allow us to do that, and then if you can add that to your route, then it becomes KINL runway 31 on your flight plan. And on your map, so now your your course is shifted slightly because it'll bring you right to the point where you'll turn in on the 45 to downwind. So that's kind of cool, especially for, you know, teaching brand new students and getting them an idea of what it is to get the, how to set yourself up correctly to go into a uncontrolled airport. So, alrighty, so now, when we're done with this one, we just hit clear and clear all, make all that stuff go away. And now for you IFR guys, so if you pull up the IFR chart, low chart, or if you're one of those that happens to have the fancy airplane, you can do the high chart too, or do the high chart. But the nice thing about this is, and all the Victor airways are there for you to use. So you could flight, you know, so when I first got ForeFlight, the way to flight plan this thing was go here and do exactly like we're doing now. Type in where you're coming from, type in where you want to go to, and it draws a straight line. Now, if you want to fly direct, then you're done. But if you want to do Victor Airways, now you have to kind of look at it, and you can either write it down, because in the old days you go, okay, you can tap and hold when you get the little blue circle. Now you can move it anywhere you want. If you move it over here and select Nav Aid, you say, I want to go to Gopher. So you tap that, and it adds Gopher to your flight plan. Now, since we're going to Fargo, we can either, looks like, go on Victor 510 or Victor 2 after Gopher. Now, if you just go out here and grab this thing and pull it down to Alexandria, all it's going to put on your flight plan is Alexandria. But what you can do is tap Gopher. You get the choices at the top there, or the ones at the bottom. We want to insert something after Gopher. We tap that and type in Victor number 2, insert. Now it adds all the intersections onto your flight plan, on your map. And when you go to the Nav Log, all those intersections are in there. So if they say how long is it going to take you to get to Tilbat, you can just pull up your Nav Log and it'll tell you right there as you're flying how long it's going to take you to get to that point. Again, for one of those, you know, not in radar contact, mandatory reporting point kind of things. And since we're flying Victor 2, what we can do here is with Alexandria is replace Alexandria with FAR. And now it gives us Victor 2 all the way to the Fargo VOR and then direct into Fargo Airport. So that's the cool thing about ForeFlight now, that they've added this probably in the last year, where you can actually type in the Victor Airways and it'll put in all the points, all the intersections in your Nav Log and on your map, so you can keep track of where you are as you're flying along in IFR conditions. So the so that's a way to do it. You know, doing your own interpretation, looking at the chart, figuring out what are the best Victor Airways for you to use based on your airplane performance and where you normally like to fly, and that type. And you know, from experience from beforehand, if you know if you've been flying various routes before. But the other thing you can do, once you've set up the KMIC to KFAR, it's over on the right side here, tap the routes section, and it gives you a whole list of previously routes that ATC has already given to other people. You're down here at the bottom, here's ours. Go for Victor 2 to Fargo. But you gotta be careful when you're selecting this stuff because some of this is, the altitudes are messed up. Down here, the airway one is, oh, this is, flying at 12,000 feet. So here's the same thing, basically. The one next up there, go for so detailed, but economy, blah, blah, blah. That's, somebody's typed in all the individual points rather than typing in Victor 2, but they're doing it at 4,500 feet. So that there's go for Victor 2 Alexandria, go for Victor 2 Fargo, more closer to the altitudes that we fly. So that's one thing you can do too, is just type in KMAC, KFAR, and go to the route section. And if you tap that, it's the stuff that we just did. You select the route, and the exact same thing shows up. So there's no difference there. But so if you're in a hurry, select the route section and pick something that's close to the altitudes that you normally fly, and it'll automatically put it in the nav log there for you. Now, if you're looking for a specific procedure when you get there, today you really want to practice the ILS when you get to Fargo, then you can go up to the procedure section again. And now, since Fargo is our destination, tap Fargo and all the approaches show up. So wind is calm, so there's nothing listed as best runway. So today you really want to practice the ILS, and so from where we're coming from, you want to practice the ILS to runway 36. So it shows, in mine, because I spent the extra money, it shows me the approach plate and most likely the ways you're going to go from where to the Fargo out to the ARC, fly the ARC to the ILS, and fly the ILS into runway 36. And if that's what you want, then, oops, I didn't stick. Oh, because I have to pick day of for the initial approach fix, then add it to the route, and then that's the one. Okay. So then day of ILS runway 36 from Fargo to the airport. If there is such a thing in this procedure section, you will also get SIDS and stars listed here that you can add to your flight plan if you want to request those and not just have them assigned to you before you leave. Coming out of Crystal, and in Fargo, there are no SIDS and stars, so that's why you don't see any over on the side here. So now, you got the flight plan filed, you looked at the weather, both from the green dots, and now you can look at the, you also need to get an official weather briefing. Back, way back last century, it was get on the phone, dial 1-800-WX brief and talk to some guy on the phone and try to write down all the stuff as he quickly talks to you very quick on the phone. Now, if you go to the bottom row here, right next to the word edit, there's a little square with an arrow in it. That's the send button. You tap on that, and you have all sorts of choices. You can mail this to a friend, do some logbook stuff, save it to a clipboard, save it to an FBL file so you can see go to Google Maps and see what it's going to look like. You can print it if your iPad's hooked up to a printer. You can transfer this information to a passenger iPad, even if they don't have ForeFlight. But the most important thing for here today, what we're doing is tap the words flights. And it brings up the information that you've just done You can take a look at the nav log for the route that you're going to fly. Now I picked the wrong altitude because I forgot to tell them I was flying IFR, but
Fred, I think we lost your screen share.
uh-oh.
We can see you on the camera, but we don't see your iPad.
Okay, thank you for speaking up. Screen has ended unexpectedly. Yeah, no kidding. Share content, screen, start the broadcast. Something new all the time. So it always beeps at me when it sets it up. Why didn't it beep at me when I shut it down? That's an interesting thing. So back to,
Okay, it's come back up.
So how did I get here? Let's go back to that. On the map side, whether you're VFR or IFR, wherever you've put in the information about your flight and got the nav log, the route all figured out, then you tap the little square with an arrow in it on the bottom here, right next to the word edit. And then all sorts of information that you can send to other people. But basically what we're doing right now is the word flights. So you tap on the flight section and it brings up the information. So you can look at the nav log. And you notice, like I just did, that we picked the wrong altitude. So then you can, all the information that's going to be filed for you is all listed down here. So you can always go down here and say, I'm flying IFR now, so I want to pick 4,000 feet, not 4,500 feet, to change the altitude. But it gives you an overview of picture of where you're going, the aircraft you've chosen, the mixture you've decided to take. It'll give you information about the airports, and if you had to declare an alternate, then you tap the word alternate there, and it gives you airports that are nearby, along with the weather, the color-coded weather, to figure out which one you would like to choose as an alternate. The next section, I think right next to Nav Log up here back at the top of the page, is the most important button to push on any day you're going flying, because this one sends your flight plan to the 1-800 weather brief system only for the purpose of getting a weather briefing. Now that you can see this on the screen, this is an official weather briefing for 2240 Golf, leaving Crystal. I think the time was about 30 minutes from now. And so now you've got an official weather briefing. You don't have to call the guy on the phone anymore. Everything that you would normally get on that briefing is already here in front of you. The first thing is all the temporary flight restrictions that are listed on, that are nearby your route of flight. Then down here at the bottom of the page, it says next. You tap on that and it goes to the Airmen Segments that may be available for your route of flight. So way up high, we have some turbulence problems. The next is synopsis, just like you're going to get from the weather briefer. The weather in Minnesota and North Dakota and South Dakota you've got a high weather pressure on it. There's weather coming in from the southwest, but right now it looks like the weather is going to be fairly decent. It picks the airports within, I think it's within 25 miles of your course line, and gives you all the METARs all the way along your route. And all the PIREPs that have been given for along your route of flight. So top one's flight level 380, the bottom one's flight level 310, so probably not something that we're going to need to be worrying about on our flight. Cloud coverage. So it gives you the top 3 for various times as you're flying along the whole country, if you want to look at that one. Visibility and surface winds as they're forecast to change. Terminal aerodrome forecasts. and the various time frames as they're going. All the Tfrs along your route of flight that are close by, Brainerd, Alexandria, St. Cloud, every place that gives you that has a TAF, the information is already out there for you. Winds and temperatures aloft chart. You can remember how to read these. This is for the altitude you've chosen at flight level 4,000 feet. If we had chosen 4,500 feet, it would pick the one that was closest to that. Remember, if it's a flag that looks like it's a half staff, it's only 5 knots. If it's a flag at the end of the thing, it's 10 knots. And so then somewhere over here, we got 15 knots. And if you get more than 40 knots of wind, when it goes to 50, a little pennant appears. Hopefully that won't happen down here at flight level 4 at 4,000 feet. What the winds are going to look like from takeoff to landing, and raw data. All the NOTAMs along your route of flight. First one is departure NOTAMs, destination NOTAMs, en route and navigation NOTAMs, en route service NOTAMs, and everything else in the world. And there you are, in a standard weather briefing, all ready to go. So, God forbid something happens and the FAA says, did you get a weather briefing? They can look into the weather brief system, talk to the flight service station folks, wherever LATO is headquartered now, used to be down in Fort Worth, Texas. And they can look up and say, because when you first get ForeFlight, when you sign up for it automatically puts your name in the system. So it's got your name, it's got your tail number, it's got where you plan to fly, what time you were leaving, and that your weather briefing was accomplished. So then we tap the back button in the upper left hand corner here. If you really want to file this, you tap the lower right hand corner for proceed to file. You check the information one more time to make sure it's all what you wanted, all the stuff that you want it to have. And if there's any information that you missed or didn't put into the airplane information, or if something is not on that's required for the flight plan, then it will let you know at this point in red what sections you need to add information to. But if you've done everything we've talked about today, then all the stuff will automatically appear here when it's filed, and everything will be ready to go, including all those Icao things that we talked about. Then in the lower right-hand corner of this, you tap File, and it goes to the weather brief, the flight service station folks at LATOS, and it's filed, ready for you to go. Now, the cool thing about this is, if you've picked one of those routes that has been issued before for you IFR guys, you're most likely going to get that because ATC has used that one before. But what I found out when I was just making stuff on my own, and before they had that route section added to ForeFlight, I would look at the chart, pick my own things, and type it all in, and have ForeFlight file it, and then I get to the airplane, and the guy say, you're cleared to Fargo via, and I said, oh crud, that means I got my pencil up because he's going to give me a different route. So the cool thing about ForeFlight now is when you click File, you'll get an email from ForeFlight when the ATC issues your clearance. So at that point, it will be ready for you to pick up in the airplane. But the cool thing about it is, in the email, it says, and here's what your route's going to be. So if the route that you're going to get is different from the route you filed, now you can go back in and reset all the stuff on ForeFlight, go back to the map, type in all the places that they're telling you to go this time, and then you'll be ready to go. So there should be no surprises if you're using ForeFlight to file, especially for your IFR guys. You should get an email from ForeFlight telling you that it's been filed, and if they route and what route they're going to give you when you ask for the file at that point. So we'll close this here. The other thing, and the message section here in the in the flight section will also let you give you the same information about whether the flight that you filed has been accepted and what route that they're planning on giving you when you go flying. So that's everything we need to talk about right now. Let me take a look here at the chat section, see if there's any more questions. For those who are helping the folks on chat, I appreciate that. It's a problem being a one-man operation. I don't have anybody watching the chat, so sometimes okay, so now we're back to Mount Washington. So any other questions, comments, or concerns? Just unmute. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
This is Ernie. I'd like to ask a question on if you do file and you don't activate the flight plan, will it just fall off, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think this is going into the flight service station system. This will be exactly the same as it's always been. If it's a VFR flight plan, it just gets put in the system. And when you call up flight service station to activate your VFR flight plan, then they'll pull it out of the computer and say, this person is now flying this flight plan. For the IFR one, they'll probably send it to your airport, but I think if it's 30 minutes past your takeoff time and you haven't called for it, there's a possibility that the tower will, or whoever you get your clearance from, will remove it from the system or it may be removed automatically. So if you're going to be late, probably the easiest thing to do is just call the person you're going to get your clearance from and let them know that if they could help you keep that open for a little bit, they'll be able to do that for a little while. But you're right. If you file it on here and then never use it, eventually it will just drop off the system.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Wasn't sure if you could hear me or not.
Right.
I'm wondering, so I've used the regular 800 weather brief to file, and I get the text messages and stuff. Now, if I file through ForeFlight, am I still going to get those same texts reminding me to cancel my flight plan and then with a link to do so, or is it going to all be done through ForeFlight?
ForeFlight, all the filing and all the weather information comes from 1-800 weather brief. So I'm assuming if you are set up in 1-800 weather brief, then it should connect to that and still send you the information that you normally get by filing through 1-800 weather brief.
Thanks. Excellent.
Can you go back to your aircraft selection? You have you must have the top rated one.
Yeah, yes, I do. Because I'm doing all these seminars, sometimes you want to talk about icing. And so the only way to get icing information is to be the what is it, the $300 version?
Yep. I have the medium one, but when you're putting your aircraft in, mine's not automatically picking the profile, the performance profiles.
Yeah. So if it doesn't do that, then down here underneath where it says custom performance profiles, you can do that yourself. Just add basic performance information and then go into your, then you get, now it's homework time, get your POH out and start plugging in all the information here and say that you wanted this to be the 75% profile or the climb profile or the descent profile, and just put all this information in there. And then down at the bottom there, it says make default. Just click on that after you've typed in all the information, and then it will save it into your system, and then it will use that information when you're filing and when you're flight planning on ForeFlight.
Yeah, it was just kind of different because when you select your aircraft, you'll get an email from ForeFlight. So I actually picked a PA-28 181 Archer 2,
Yeah,
and then it comes back. I get an email that says all the Icao codes and everything, or they put all those in for you.
yeah. So all
But
that stuff
yeah,
there,
for
but
some reason, not the performance. So that was kind of weird.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay,
that may be the next step up. Sorry about that. So, but like I said, you just the down at the bottom of the so click the profile. It'll have 0 there. Click that profile thing on the. Let me go back. So in the place where you're putting information about the airplane performance profiles, just tap on that, and then custom performance profiles, just tap on that and type in all the information. Now you got to at least put in the cruise to airspeed and the fuel flow for the profile. And so if you just want to do that for 75%, 65%, and 55% power and name them that, then you're good to go. If you're not, then because now it might get a little triangle next to 2240 Golf because they have a profile up with no information on it. But you can spend time with the POH figuring out what your climb true airspeed is going to be, how much fuel flow you plan to have during that climb, and what your climb rate is going to be. So then it'll put that into your flight planning information. So it'll help you figure out, give you a better idea of your fuel usage during the flight. And then same thing for descent.
all right, thanks.
And if you don't need it, just click delete and everything's back to normal. Any other questions? Okay, so hearing no other questions, then that's all I got for today. I'm getting near, so for me as Chief Flight Instructor, I'm getting near the end of the quarter. So for those of you who are used to seeing me the second Saturday of every month, next month my boss has told me I cannot do one of these because I'll probably be doing 3 or 4 check rides that day, trying to get everybody done before the end of the quarter at Academy College, for where most of our flight students come from. So next month I will be next month I will be busy elsewhere, so I won't be able to do a ForeFlight seminar, but I will be back in May, and I thought I had my list of possible things to talk about. Anyway, keep an eye on if you're a member of our Thunderbird email system, we'll send it out as soon as they have a topic to talk about. Keep an eye on FAAsafety.gov. They've made me a FAA safety representative, so I'm able to put my own seminars into the system. And for those of you who own your own airplanes, on March 27th, our Director of Maintenance at Thunderbird Aviation, Paul Block, will be doing a seminar on getting your airplane ready if it's been sitting in the hangar all winter and you haven't flown it all yet. So if there are no other questions, we'll see you on the 27th and the second weekend in May.
Real quick, is this going to be available on FAA safety website as an archived webinar?
No, but it will be on our website. If you go to thunderbirdaviation.com and on our website, our Zoom guru takes all these and puts them. It won't be, probably be sometime around Monday. He will put all this information on there, so you'll be able to look at the archived seminars that I've done in the past and all the ones that Paul Block has done too. Those will be on our website.
Very good. Outstanding. Nicely done.